Phantom Thread is a subdued, disquieting, neurotic, and unexpectedly comedic love story propped up by great, idiosyncratic performances and art design, though you best be fresh out of bed and had your coffee before watching it, because it's quite long, lacks a sense of build-up, and then it gets a little weird. This review will contain some Act 1 and 2 spoilers. A timestamp for my rating and pros-cons chart is in the description. Phantom Thread takes place in 1950s London, following a reclusive artiste dressmaker named Woodcock. Shh. I know. Reynolds is a quiet, though demanding perfectionist, renowned enough in his work to tailor wares for countesses and princesses, but he demands the same ship-shape diligence from his lovers that he does from his employees, leaving him distant and isolated. Reynolds uses his infatuations with women as muses and models for his fashion designs, without ever growing too close. One day, while having breakfast at a hotel in the countryside, Reynolds stumbles on a new inspiration named Alma. However, her spontaneity, eager spirit, and inquisitive nature soon proved to be both a delight and a serious challenge to Reynolds' business and way of life. Can Alma uncover the enigma that is Reynolds, and will they be able to coexist and find love in one another? I'm going to be upfront with you. Many will feel Phantom Thread is boring and overlong. The film's cutting style is restrained, atmospheric, and slow, filled with way more pregnant pauses than my Last Jedi review. Over halfway through the film, an audience member in my theater started snoring for more than 10 minutes. Luckily, it was distant and more breathy, but the movie's volume was soft enough to where I could still hear him. Phantom Thread's editing places us in the moment, living out the stillness in the air. The cutting is reflective of Reynolds Woodcock himself. Concentrated, steady, and undisturbed. Many conversations play out with all the thrill of an empty lake on a windless day. Let this be a sample. Dialogue is almost monotonously soft and mumbly, though as Alma is introduced into Reynolds' life, the cutting grows more lively and joyful in fits and stops. The pacing spikes and dips with their relationship. Stagnant, energetic, stagnant, energetic, etc. It's a trade-off. The movie allows events to play out much closer to how they would in real life, full of awkward silences and glances while characters think of what to say next, at the risk of boring members of the audience. Scenes that some may find mysterious and peculiar, others will feel are stilted and flat. I personally thought it was a little long, but still captivating. But I can understand this will not be up many people's alleys. You should probably not see this with a huge group of friends who are anticipating something big or energetic or anything like that, and you should maybe only bring one person or watch it by yourself. The film intends for us to experience the quiet death in the air, in order to further and truly savor the fleeting instances of energy, happiness, and glee, even confrontations. There is character growth communicated through the sound design and volume mixing of breakfast utensil noises, which may not have stood out as much or been as effective without the silence throughout. Indeed, Phantom Thread wants the audience to be as patient, focused, and detail-oriented as its lead character. One must be ready to pay quite a bit of attention to get the most out of this movie. Little details and changes in behavior and appearance brought on by Reynolds and Alma's relationship become quite delightful and fun if you are invested. For example, I was the only one out of 4 viewers in my theater to laugh as Reynolds Woodcock was so incensed by Alma that he takes a bite out of what he had previously referred to as a stodgy pastry. Maybe they just didn't think it was funny. Or perhaps there had been too much time since the setup for the payoff to register with them. I imagine that a ruthless editor could have trimmed the film down to a breezy, involving roller coaster 100-minute length. Many more people might have better connected with this movie if it had just a few of these longer, more atmospheric scenes at key emotional moments, providing standout samples of what the characters are going through, with the rest of the movie trimmed for brevity and wit. I see the potential here for a snappy, unorthodox romantic comedy, something Woody Allen-esque, with pacing that breathes but flows much faster. Instead of teasing the audience with a slow burn, it all could have been more straightforward and fun. There are many humorous and relatable couple moments which would have been hilarious, yet still sincere, if they were cut tightly. Comedy and fun, you say? Yes. Daniel Day-Lewis gives an excellent final, performance as Reynold Woodcock, a quiet, irritable, tightly wound man liable to burst at the slightest disruption or imperfection in his daily routine. He's a polite and dignified upperclassman on the surface, but unsettle his concentration at his breakfast, and the man's whole day may never recover. He's a simmering pot of neuroses, a delicate dressmaker by way of Jordan Peterson's looks and Colonel Hans Landa's uneasy personality. He does not like confrontation or shows of emotion. Phantom Thread is about this stubborn, moody man having to face change. While his previous muses were more obedient and discarded at the first sign of nonconformity, Alma, a clumsy, lower-class waitress with the perfect modeling proportions, is more curious and unpredictable. Played by Vicky Krieps, Alma breathes life into Reynold, and by extension, the second act of the movie. Here is where the best time is had, as Alma pokes the bear of Reynold's personality, slowly testing what she can say, do, or get away with in varying social situations, as she acts as Reynold's muse, model, and lover. The boundaries between each role and what recognition the most intimate role deserves from Reynold is a source of good tension in their work and private relationship together. Lewis and Krieps are joined by a strong supporting cast, the most prominent of which is Reynold's sister/secretary, Cyril, played by Lesley Manville. She is stone-faced and job-focused, amusingly understanding Reynold Woodcock's many peculiarities and needs. Though, I wish I knew more clearly what motivates her. Is it a jealousy of her brother's bachelor ways and/or a chilly knowledge that, considering her age, her brother is and may forever be the only man in her life? Maybe she's just protective? Cyril is left ambiguous, or maybe it was just too subtle for me. But her dedication to her brother with an air of "don't come crying to me" attitude suggests something deeper is going on. During my viewing, I somehow didn't catch that they were brother and sister until much later in the movie, and I was confused by their relationship throughout, until towards the end of the second act. At one point, I gasped at what I thought would be a revelation that she was secretly Mrs. Reynold Woodcock. Oops. Her being his sister explains a lot. This may be another unintended consequence of the slower pacing. During a few of the larger gaps in dialogue and action, my mind would wander to think about what I had watched previously, until I sensed something more important was happening again. Sort of a mental self-editing. I had to consciously focus more than other films, and I missed the exposition lines about Cyril being his sister throughout the first 2/3 of the film. To be fair, sometimes the British accent, coupled with the soft-spoken nature of the dialogue, can result in sentences and phrases being slurred. Many times, I thought Reynold Woodcock was actually referring to her as Sarah when he was saying Cyril. It took me a while to realize her name was Cyril and not Sarah. So maybe I thought whenever he was saying sister, that he was actually saying Sarah, which was a slur of Cyril. I don't know. I remember zoning out a bit during a fireplace chat, and then realizing the characters were suddenly standing in front of family photos, and I had missed the beginning of Reynold's backstory. I'm a bit embarrassed to say all of this, but I'm just being honest. You may daydream and miss a crucial piece of information or two due to the slower editing versus the high-speed electronic world we live in now. Back to the supporting cast, also noteworthy is a brief surprise performance from Harriet Sansom Harris, who I recognized with a giddy laugh from her days as BB Glazer, Dr. Crane's secretary on the sitcom Frasier. Miss Harris gives a touching performance as a self-aware, ugly person not worthy to wear a dress by Mr. Woodcock, and the subsequent subplot is one of the highlights of the film. Phantom Thread's divisive pacing will only be saved for you based on how much you enjoy the aforementioned acting, coupled with the art design and musical score, which is fantastic. Light, delicate piano keystrokes and graceful strings complement Reynolds' ritzy upper-class dress shop, synchronizing to his measuring, fluffing, sewing, and hemming. There is a beauty in watching Daniel Day-Lewis quietly prepare a dress to the sounds of an orchestra, making him a maestro in his own right, using the music to communicate his delicacy, discipline, and precision. Then, the instruments spring to visceral life and at times communicate more of the undercurrent, bubbling tension and emotion than the performers would have on their own. Speaking of tension, there is an underlying sense of dark mystery to Reynold Woodcock, intentionally reinforced by the slower, leery nature of the editing and the cinematography. The film can be an unsettling, slow burn, with off-putting details and glances, walking a fine line of discomfort and romance, which bolsters the moments of levity. Is there something more sinister afoot? I won't say, though there are a few surprises, and one truly haunting, goosebump-inducing scene that I didn't forget very easily, and now that I'm reading this review, it's all coming back to me. among the unpredictability is the fact that Phantom Thread has a fourth act to its structure. Where is this going, I wondered? There is what I felt was a natural ending, but the film presses beyond it for another chunk, delivering a weirder conclusion with perhaps a more mature message. For some viewers, this may seal their dislike for this movie. It offers a unique perspective on relationships, which I understood, but didn't fully connect with at my age. Couples or people who have been in more long-term relationships may find this resonates with them much more than it did with me. It was insightful and unexpected, giving me something to think about, even if I could not register it as true or sincere from my own experiences. I appreciated it, though it felt cold. Others may find it completely nonsensical, and that was my first reaction. Like, huh? Huh? Honestly, Phantom Thread was a 4-star experience for me most of the way through, and I was waiting for that gut punch of pathos or payoff, which never quite got there for me. Potentially emotional scenes with great emotional performances slightly underdeliver, not fully connecting with me. Then the weird conclusion left my opinion still quite positive, yet more dubious. What about the secrets that Reynold Woodcock stitches into his dresses? You know, from the trailers and previews? I almost forgot about this aspect. The previews and the final film established that Reynold Woodcock sews hidden messages and names into all of the gowns he makes, things that are personal and that only he will know are there. While played for mystery in the marketing, this aspect is merely a thoughtful peculiarity in the final film, and it does not have any grand payoff. Don't expect one. There will be no scene of a character ripping apart dresses to decode some sort of nefarious confession. It's instead symbolic, reflecting Reynolds' changing state of mind, and certainly not driving any plot points. Well, I say that, and as I say that out loud, I realize it actually might have a really big impact on one plot point, but it doesn't really register as inspiring the events that unfold, in my opinion. Phantom Thread is quite different to director Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. While both star Daniel Day-Lewis in great leading roles, Phantom Thread's Reynold Woodcock lacks the drive and determination of There Will Be Blood's Daniel Plainview. And by extension, so does Phantom Thread, the movie, lack drive and determination. Woodcock has already achieved what he thinks he wants and is resistant to changing what's working. There is very little of the business negotiations and management that was present in There Will Be Blood, and Phantom Thread isn't consistently building towards something and never explodes like There Will Be Blood does. Instead, Phantom Thread is a pseudo-suspenseful, relationship-oriented character experience with fish-out-of-water comedic moments, featuring amusing blends of inspiration from movies such as Psycho to When Harry Met Sally, among many other films, I'm sure. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, but one of my audience members confessed it felt like 3 hours. Her man friend remarked, it felt more like a play. I could see that. Though there are a lot of visually communicated plot points and emotions which wouldn't translate well to the stage. But I understand his point with regard to the movie's length, subject matter, breathing room, and its character focus. Plus the ornate setting and accents that you would sometimes associate with a play. Phantom Thread is too long for me. Doesn't traditionally build to something and has a weird act 4, but overall, I really enjoyed the details, music, the performances, and the character interplay. It poses interesting questions. How does one develop from a spark of lust into a long-lasting relationship? What is it in Reynold and us that sabotages this? The missing Phantom Thread. Was that cheesy? I give Phantom Thread 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And for anyone skipping to the rating section, it was a 4-star experience for most of the time for me. Though, like I said, proceed with caution before you introduce this to other people. You might want to watch this alone when you had a lot of coffee. Be ready to give it your full go. You gotta work for this movie. And in turn, this movie might just work for you too. Until I sensed something. Sorry.